Hello, everyone. Forest Focus, Nottingham Forest see their midfield talisman linked with Manchester City, while another striker is touted as a possible signing. Joining me to discuss that in a bit of a mini podcast is Paul Morley. Paul, afternoon. How you doing?
Good, thank you, Matt. Yeah, I'm not too bad. Not too bad on half term, so having to juggle working and parenting duties, but managed to get half an hour down the driving range, get the boys out of the house earlier on today. So we've done our activity for today. So the wife will be happy when she gets home from work, and I won't get told off for leaving them to stew in their bedroom.
You've fulfilled the main task of the day, and this is very secondary to that, but I am grateful to you. I'm extra grateful because we were going to do a phone in tonight at 7, but my own parenting duties have scuppered that. So we'll do a phone in soon. But wanted to talk about this briefly with Paul. I don't know if he even knows who the striker who's been linked is, because it's just a bit of a fanciful rumour. We'll come to that second, but we'll start with Morgan Gibbs-White. David Ornstein of The Athletic tweeting that Manchester City are looking at a range of names, but Gibbs-White is on it, along with Florian Wirtz, the German international, to replace Kevin De Bruyne after he announced he was off at the end of the season. Paul, what do you make of it in general? We'll get into specifics. Are you worried? Are you bothered? What do you think of the rumour?
Not particularly worried. I don't think. I read the article. I don't think it necessarily tells us anything that we probably couldn't have imagined anyway. I'd imagine that Morgan Gibbs-White has an agent, and I'm sure he's been aware for 6-12 months that he'll be on the radar of teams like City, particularly with De Bruyne at the stage of the career he's at. So I don't think it's necessarily unsettling for him as a player. I think from our perspective, it's part of the territory that we're in now. We've had obviously a great deal of success this season. Morgan has stood out not just this year but for the last couple of years. So the fact that he's attracting interest from the likes of Man City isn't a surprise, and it's B, probably something we just need to get used to. The question of whether it materialises into anything or not, I think, is a different one. I'm sure we'll discuss the merits of both from a club's perspective and from his perspective as to whether that would be a good deal for both parties, one party, etc. So yeah, I'm not concerned by it, not surprised by it, but yeah, it's obviously something that definitely warrants a bit of discussion for sure.
Just on Florian Wirtz, a bit more background. He's younger than Morgan. Morgan's 25, he's 21. He's already got 29 German caps, and he's got Champions League experience, hence why he's probably valued higher than Morgan. He's valued at 150 million by Leverkusen, according to the piece in The Athletic. Gibbs-White's contract runs out in 2027, so he's sort of in that last year before his value arguably starts depreciating marginally. Let's talk about it from a player point of view, then a club point of view. Let's assume we make the Champions League. Do any of our players want to go, or do you think that the lure of one of the big six, who, if City are in the Champions League as well, is that a trickier one to turn down, do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on that, doesn't it? If one of us is in, if we're in and they're not, then I think that makes that obviously a strong sort of pull in our direction for him to want to stay. If both clubs get into it, then I think if you take your Forest hat off of it for a second, if you think of the age he's at, 25, he's got probably the next 5-6 years ahead of him as the peak of his career. He's going to want to be somewhere that is going to be challenging for honours, and you'd have to say that the likelihood of him doing that at Forest is probably lower than him doing that at City. So that's obviously a factor. The flip side of that is, of course, he has been the central point of us building this team over the last 2 or 3 years to get to this point, and you would like to think that he would want to play a part in the next stage of that journey, having been so pivotal in getting us to this stage. And he talks very fondly about the club whenever you see him in interviews. He's obviously got a young family who appear to be settled in Nottingham. So there's all those sorts of things which come into play. I guess the other thing that maybe if you're thinking about moving to Man City as any player, and how significant this would be, I'm not sure, but they've still got these charges hanging over them that nobody really knows what the outcome's going to be, which I'm sure would be a factor. If I was put myself in his shoes, you you think, right, I'm going to go to Man City, and all of a sudden they get whacked with, points deduction or whatever it might be, or banned from Europe, or who knows what. Then actually it's not quite as rosy as it would appear from this perspective in terms of this point in time. So lots of things to consider. I guess the other thing as well, which I don't know if you were going to mention, but I think he's is he Phil Foden's child's godfather? So he's obviously got a link into the Man City dressing room, I think, hasn't he? So he's close with Foden. So that's something which maybe is, gives us reason to think that he can have those conversations privately about what it's like at the club, or what's like at City. So I'm sure that there's lots of things for him to weigh up. But coming back to your original question, I think if we get into the Champions League, then I'd be surprised if he was tempted to leave. Maybe it's a question of we get to a situation where the club and him come to some sort of gentleman's agreement that, look, give us one more year, Morgan, in the Champions League, and then perhaps at that point, we're willing to listen to offers if you wanted to go on and continue elsewhere. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if there's something like that in the background that ends up being done. I think even if that was the case, I'd still back him to give his all for Forest. He's that kind of character. He's not the kind of character that would down tools, I don't think. So I don't think we'd have anything to be concerned about if that were the case, and I don't think we'd even get to know about it if it was. But that's a scenario I could see playing out, which kind of keeps everybody happy for the next 12 months or so.
The second question, of course, is the club point of view. On Monday, we had a long discussion around transfers with Fletcher and Mark, and Fletcher made the point that we don't have an infinite pot in the Champions League. We have if we get in the Champions League, we have a big pot, but to really expand it, you could sell a Gibbs-White or someone like that for substantial PSR profit, and then one sale opens up the door to 3 signings, basically. That kind of thinking, as we've seen with John Duran at Villa. They've invested that money pretty wisely by the look of it. Would you welcome that? And then I suppose the subsequent question is, at what point financially, what transfer value would you welcome that?
Yeah, I think the positive thing is that the club probably holds most of the cards in that sort of scenario. So we obviously saw with the accounts last week from that were published that we're in a decent spot from a PSR perspective. So we're certainly not under any pressure to set. I think given the fact that we are in the top half of the league, even though in terms of Morgan as an individual has obviously influenced that to a degree, but I think that just gives you more power in terms of demanding a larger transfer fee because of obviously what the player's leaving in terms of an opportunity behind him. So yeah, I think we hold the cards. If that's the case, that we could command upwards of, you'd have to think upwards of 80 million, surely, for a player of his caliber, given what he's done. And I think everybody who ever watched a football match, probably apart from Thomas Tuchel, thought that Morgan should have got minutes in an England shirt in the last month or so. So yeah, look, we hold all the cards. I think if that were the case, and as you say, if there were 3 players that were able to be brought in for 20-30 million that comfortably filled the gap, then it's something that we'd have to look at for sure. I think Marinakis obviously made it clear, and Nuno reiterated that, didn't he, in the January transfer window, that the key aim for the club at that particular point was to hold on to the talent that we've got. And I don't necessarily see that being any different this summer. But like you say, if a sale of 80 odd million plus open the door to maybe other players that we at this stage couldn't get a handle on, then maybe that is a consideration we'd have to think about long and hard.
Yeah, when you were talking 80 was the figure in my head as well. I think I know people reference Grealish. Once you get up to 100 million Grealish fee, I think that's impossible to turn down personally. But 80 million would make me think very, very long and hard about it. Let's leave that one there on Gibbs-White, because it's just a rumour. And I wanted to bring people something today to get their teeth into anyway, in lieu of the phone in, and this dropped at a nice time. So we covered that one off. We'll pick it up on Thursday, probably with Mark and Mikey, get their thoughts on it in the match preview. The other rumour that was mentioned today, much more tentatively from Tribal Football and Graham Bailey, who does lots of transfer stuff for Sky, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. floating around. Again, he's on a free transfer. He's linked with Newcastle, Villa, and Newcastle, Manchester United, and us. Sorry, in this piece, contracts up at the end of the season. I must admit, my initial impression on that was no, thank you, just because of injuries. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, it's interesting, wasn't it? If you'd have had that conversation a couple of years ago when we got promoted, you'd have been all over it, wouldn't you? But yeah, I mean, obviously, injuries is his biggest challenge, isn't it? I mean, I know he played a number of games without scoring for a long period of time, but I think Everton themselves have been the lowest scorers in the league for the last 3 seasons combined. So I just read a little bit less into the fact that even when he has played, he hasn't scored because he's been playing in that team that were struggling, full stop, to create chances. So free transfer is an interesting one. I guess the other thing then comes about, if he's a free, then his wages are probably going to be pretty substantial, which I don't think would. Yeah, I feel a bit uncomfortable with paying him top whack wages wise, even if it is on free, because I don't necessarily think that he's of the caliber that would walk into a dressing room that might put a few noses out of joint, where this guy's just walked in the door without having done anything for the past 2 or 3 years, and he's all of a sudden one of the highest earners in the club. So yeah, for me that would be certainly not towards the top of the list. I think if the summer dragged on and we missed out on target number 1, 2, and 3, or whatever, whoever they may be, and that was still hanging around as an option, then maybe we want to kind of keep on the back burner. But I wouldn't be knocking the door down for Calvert-Lewin, even on free.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. I mean, he is a good player. He's had a good career. I was just looking at his stats while you were chatting there. His injury record isn't as bad as I thought, to be honest. He had a spell where he was England's number 2 striker, really. But this season, he's only got 3 goals in 22 Premier League games. He started a lot of those with no success, basically. But he did play 38 last season, so maybe he's shaken off the worst of his injuries. I'm not sure, but you've got to go back to. Oh gosh, his injury record is pretty bad, actually. The 2 seasons before that, I'm just scrolling through now. I think it's 2020, 2021 before was his last good season. Yeah, 2020, 21. So 4 years ago, he got 25 goals in 50 games, and he was playing for England in the Euros. So there obviously is a player there, but I think I find it difficult to trade Taiwo for him, and I certainly don't think you could add Taiwo to him to Taiwo as our third with Chris Wood. I mean, that would be impossible, wouldn't it?
No, I agree. I think it goes back to what I think Fletcher was saying the other day in terms of the club is at a position now where we want to be taking on people that are going to improve what we've already got. I don't necessarily think Calvert-Lewin. He would add depth. I mean, I guess if this was going back to January and he was available on free for the rest of this season, or even on loan for the rest of this season, and he plugged that gap that we've got now, then absolutely would have been up for that. But I think coming to the summer, assuming we've got European football ahead of us, we've got the pull of having European football should make us attractive to a number of different targets that are probably younger than Calvert-Lewin. Don't come with the injury risk. Albeit perhaps not the proven pedigree, perhaps in a number of cases, but still, I think my shopping basket would be looking to put something in from elsewhere before I look at Calvert-Lewin.
Yeah, I agree. A 3-year rather hefty contract, as you say, doesn't appeal, especially if we were to keep Taiwo. And if we let Taiwo go, I think I'd be looking elsewhere. Right, we shall leave that one there. Thanks for everyone's company. Just a reminder, there's a post show at the NAV after the Everton game, thanks to an 80s band, or just a band from the 80s, as it says on the flyer here. So entry is free. Get your dinner there afterwards. This is one of our only games for a while that isn't televised. So they're not showing at the NAV, but you can enjoy the day there. The weather should be good. So if you don't have a ticket, do spend the day at the NAV and then enjoy the post-match show. Right, we'll be back tomorrow with Seb Hutchinson. That's out for members now. If you are a member, you'll be able to watch that. It's a good chat on the Champions League and a bit of transfer stuff as well around different players. And then Thursday match preview with Mark and Mikey. Do us a favour, hit like on this video if you haven't already. Do give us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. And as I say, do sign up for membership or Patreon. Paul, you've been a bit of a hero today. Even though you've only given me 15 minutes, it feels like I've badgered you for 15 hours. So thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Good to have you with us. We'll have Paul back on soon. No post-match show on Saturday after the Everton game, which Paul would normally do, but we'll have those as normal afterwards. Right, as I say, do join us for Seb tomorrow, but if you don't, we shall see you soon.